Hello there. This is the Student Theologian with another upload, and this time I'm actually on time. I'm supposed to be filming these episodes every other week. My thoughts on, and today I'm actually recording this on a Thursday, so you will get this episode on a Friday probably. And that's because I've been snowed in. I've had all sorts of free time, which has been used for my benefit because I've been having to learn Greek, which has been very difficult, very strenuous, and sometimes annoying endeavor. It's been tough learning a whole language. Nostino means I know a lot more about Greek than I did before. This kind of reminds me of when a long time ago, I used to take this coding class. I was trying to get into coding, to building websites and stuff like that. And it was all online, of course. And I remember doing this assignment, and I sat and tried to do that assignment for hours. I just sat at the same place on my keyboard, trying to find all the errors in this program, and I just couldn't do it. I did not see any progress. I stared at that assignment for hours and still was not able to do it, and so I finally had to go to sleep. And it was at that point I realized coding is not in my future. But with Greek, you can actually see progress as you learn words. Akuso means I hear. Ami means I am. And I know other words as well, as like cardia means heart. Phone means voices. It's where the word phone comes from. And I'm not here to show off all my Greek knowledge. It feels good to be putting this all together. I don't know if I'm getting this at the kind of pace, the kind of fast pace that my professor would like. I think I've said this before on other uploads, but I'm never going to be the A+ student. B- minus is fine by me. And you get your degree whether or not you make all A's or all B's. So that was kind of just led into my life updates. But yeah, I'm doing Greek classes now. I'm learning Greek. I'm also doing a Systematic Theology 1 class, which I'm really enjoying. There's a lot more history in this Systematic Theology class that I was not expecting. During the last lecture, we went over the Pelagians Augustine debate, as well as Arminius and John Calvin. And yeah, it's been great. My professor, he's very knowledgeable about these things. And as I've said in other podcasts, all my professors are Reformed. I think this is the first time that I have a professor who's not a 5-point Calvinist, though. So hopefully, maybe I'll change his mind throughout this semester. I think that's one of my goals, is we need to get Dr. Ware to become a 5-point Calvinist. We need to get him to accept that L, to hold that L. And if you're if you don't know what I'm talking about, and not trying to say that we should beat him in a debate and have him hold the loss. The L in the TULIP acronym stands for Limited Atonement, and most people who are 4-point Calvinist, this is the part of the acronym that they disagree with. So, and I'm going to go back to this subject after I finish talking about my Greek lessons. So, why is it that we have to learn ancient Greek when we're going to seminary? What's it useful for? Well, my other professor, Dr. Hamilton, that I took last semester, he went over this. He said that we need to do languages, not just one language for our degree, which is the bare requirement. So if I wanted to, all I have to do is this one Greek course this semester, and I never have to take another language again. But Dr. Hamilton said, and I agree with him on this, he said that would not be wise. You need to dig deep into the languages. And I enjoy learning Greek. As hard and as strenuous as it is, as much effort and time it takes to do it, I like seeing progress. I like seeing the fact that I have all these words memorized. Not a whole bunch of words, but it's starting to come together. I'm proud that I have the alphabet memorized for the most part, and it's something that when you're doing these Greek classes, you constantly have to review your previous assignments. Like if I stopped looking over the alphabet for like a month or a couple of weeks, I'd probably forget it. So I try to go over the alphabet at least once or twice a day. I do something with the Greek every single day. And during this time that we're snowed in, I've been putting multiple hours just studying Greek, writing down all the paradigms I have to memorize, writing down the alphabet again and again. And the reason why it's so important to learn these languages when you're going to seminary is that the Bible was originally written in the original ancient Hebrew and Greek, the New Testament being ancient Greek. So if you want to understand the Bible as at its most basic foundational point, you have to learn the languages. You have to learn how it was written in its original context. This isn't to say that the interpretations that we have are wrong, but I think the best, you get the full context, you get the full content of what these authors meant when you study the original languages. It's also the reason why it's important to have cultural context. Like you can read and understand the Bible without the cultural context, but the cultural context puts it into perspective and helps you understand it better. And that's basically what the ancient Greek does as well. The ancient Greek and ancient Hebrew that the Bible was written in, this is what we say we are referring to when we say the Bible is inerrant and infallible. It's inerrant and infallible in its ancient Hebrew and ancient Greek. There are some interpretations that get it so wrong that they steer away from the original meaning and context that the authors wrote. And some bad translations would be like the Message Bible. So yeah, that's why it's important. It's understanding what the authors intended at their full context, and understanding it in the ancient Greek and Hebrew helps you understand God, because that's what the Bible is. It's a book that tells you about God, how to find God, our relationship with God, why it's broken, and how it can be fixed. So I think, and that's what I'm excited about. That's why I'm excited about learning Greek, because it's going to improve my spiritual life, improve my relationship with God, and help me understand Him better, because I'm understanding His Word better. So, and then I want to get back to talking about my professor who does not believe in the full 5 points. And it's always interesting to me when I see someone who doesn't believe in the five full points. They just believe in the 4 points. Those 4 points being the T, which stands for total depravity, I, which stands for irresistible grace. They don't believe in the L, but they do believe in I. They believe in the U, which is unconditional election, the I, which stands for irresistible grace, and the P, which is preservation of the saints. Now, being Baptist, every single Baptist believes in the P of the TULIP acronym, because they always say, once saved, always saved. So, but if you look at TULIP and tie it all together, they're all inextricably tied together. You can't just remove one of them. Because following the laws of logic, let's say everyone's totally depraved. Like, Dr. Ware believes that. Okay? So everyone has the curse of Adam. Everyone has this sinful nature inside them. Everyone has no ability to come to Christ of their own. That means we have to have God regenerate us before we can come to Christ. And that's why when He calls us, leads to unconditional election. Again, it has to be unconditional because there's no conditions we can do to have this calling. It's unconditional because God calls us. And then skip the L, irresistible grace. We can't resist this grace. We may be able to resist grace for a little bit, but ultimately God's going to save whoever He intends to save. And predestination, unconditional election ties into predestination. So if you believe that people are predestined, which my professor might not think that. He might think that the predestination is God's foreknowledge, not him actually doing something. But even if you take the rest of the tulip at its word, it kind of leads you to accepting limited atonement as a reality. And maybe limited atonement is not the proper way to say it, because it might give the wrong impression that God's power is somehow limited. But it is particular atonement. Like, if you believe that people are predestined to go to heaven or hell, then it automatically leads you to accepting limited atonement, because if people are predestined, if he has a predestined elect that are going to come to Christ, that is the particular atonement we're talking about. If God predestines who's saved and who's not, then he has that number in his mind, in God's mind, of people who are able to be saved. And that's why it's called limited atonement, because there is a limited, God's grace is not a potentially saves all type of grace. It's a grace that saves everyone whom God wants, whoever he wills. And if you see how this all ties together, you'll see how you can't just take out one of the acronyms that you don't like. Like the idea that God died for everyone in the world universally, whoever lived and died. That's called unlimited atonement. And that would mean that God did not predestine anyone to salvation, because if he predestines anyone to if he predestines the elect to salvation, that is limited atonement, pretty much. It's the same thing. But if you accept unlimited atonement, it throws everything else off. You're basically saying that God's atonement can only be effective for those who accept it, for those who do the work, who say the sinner's prayer. So I disagree with Dr. Ware on this, and maybe I'll get to explain this to him, and maybe I'll get some reasoning from him. Maybe he has a good reason to believe in unlimited atonement. Like, I've heard it said that, I think this is the Reformed position, that God's atonement is able to save worlds over, but it's effectual only for the elect. And I would agree with that. I think that is what limited atonement describes. So I think just following the flow of logic, it would lead you to believe that God's grace is particular, that he saves everyone who he intends to save. And there's many different Bible passages you could go to support this idea. In John, I can't remember what chapter, but Jesus says that all those whom the Father gives me will come to me. In Romans 9, we're going to be in Romans 8 later, but Romans 9, where it says, God has mercy on whom he has mercy. And God loved Jacob and hated Esau. Now, the amazing thing about that passage is that, not that God hated Esau, but the fact that that God was able to love Jacob despite his sins. So, and again, this isn't an injustice on God's part. Like, one of the things that Arminius argued is that if God predestined people to heaven and hell, he would be an unjust God. And it's ironic that he's making the same exact argument that Paul answers back to in Romans chapter 9. It's almost as if Arminius did not read that passage, or he read it and disagreed with the Apostle Paul. And you can't disagree with the Bible. It's the inerrant words of God. So I think Arminius erred quite a lot in why he was denounced as a heretic by the church, by the early church of his time period. I think Augustine and Calvin were accurate in their soteriology. I think that they were accurate in their views of how God saves an individual. So, but my professor does like Augustine and Calvin and stuff. He just doesn't believe in the limited atonement aspect. And it's going to be interesting because I want to hear his perspective on that further. I don't want to distract him from teaching the course. So, but this is the only time where I think I've had a major disagreement with any of my professors about anything. Well, other than the aspect of Christian nationalism, which I disagree with my professor on during church history. And again, I've said this in the past videos. I think that the mainstream Baptist view is that they're not Christian nationalists, which is a shame. I wish we were. But I think the Baptist church is wrong on that area. But that's a topic for another day. So other life updates that I'm doing, I'm also taking an HVAC class. Our pastor recently is talking about money, and this is the first time that I've heard him do a topical sermon. 9 times out of 10, my pastor will do an biblical exposition, but he recently just got done with Galatians, so now we're talking about money. And this isn't the type of church that cares a great deal about money. It's not a prosperity gospel type church. I think it's good for us to learn about how to manage and be good stewards of what God's given us. But my HVAC courses, and this is going to be a hard semester for me because I'm learning Greek, learning a new language, and learning HVAC, a new skill, a trade. So that's going to be interesting. But I'm excited to learn it. I wish I could just plant all this stuff in my head so I wouldn't have to learn everything, but that's not the way God made us. But I'm doing that because I want to get a skill and a trade that I can do if I have to do bivocational ministry, which I'm open to now after hearing Pastor Sam's sermon. Like, in a perfect world, I would have a pastor job that would excuse me. In a perfect world, I would have a full-time ministry job that would pay me enough to do full-time ministry. That would be great. But I'm also open to doing bivocational ministry. As long as I'm provided with something. I wouldn't as long as I'm not like putting overtime in a full-time job and doing ministry at the same time. That would be hectic. I think my maximum would be 40 hours a week doing a job and using the other free time that I have to do ministry. I also hope to be married soon, so. But ministry is a hard calling. It's as Paul David Tripp said, a dangerous calling. It opens the way for all sorts of sins, temptations, and you're learning all this stuff and content and learning all these languages, doing these, when it would be far easier to do it in another degree. And you'd probably make a lot of more money doing those other things. So with ministry, you have to be absolutely sure that this is your passion, that this is what you want to do. But, all right, I want to get to one geopolitical issue before I get into a little bit about the Bible. But ICE, again, this is a hot topic because this continues to be a topic that is heavily discussed on social media. And I just want to talk about celebrities' opinions on this. Celebrities, pro athletes, musicians, all these bands, all these pop stars, we need to remember that these people are just entertainers. They're actors. They're here to entertain us. Anyone who thinks that their political views or their historical views, their theology views are relevant or smart or intelligent, they're fooling themselves. You should not listen to the political opinions, the political drivel that comes from these celebrities' mouths, from these elitists who think they're better than everyone. Like, there was a actor, I can't even pronounce his name, but he said that we need a revolution, and some people, a lot of people would die, but the rest of us would be happy. Really? When he said that, I pictured Lord Farquaad in his ivory tower saying, "Some of you may die, but that's a sacrifice I am willing to make." That's what that comes across. And then you have Ariana Grande, who wants to create an Ice Out protest day, where she calls on all working class people to essentially take the day off, to not earn money that day, and to instead spend that day protesting ICE. You're a rich celebrity who's a multi-millionaire, and you're telling these working class people that they need to take the day off of work just so they can protest your cause. It's stupid. It's dumb. Why do we allow these celebrities, these elitists, to have these type of opinions, and why do we listen to them? Why do we give them the time of day? It's all coordinated. It's all a coordinated attack. It's all these woke corporations. All of Hollywood is controlled by these globalist elites who try to control the narrative. They purposely ask them these questions about ICE and these political topics, and they know exactly what kind of answers they're going to get. And if any of these actors, any of these celebrities, any of these pop stars say anything in support of ICE, they're going to get canceled the same way Gina Carano was canceled. Because this is how Hollywood does it. This is the woke corporations. This is how they do it. They silence anyone who opposes them. They expect you to toe a political line. And if you cross it, if you say anything that can be remotely considered Christian or conservative, they'll try to cancel you and silence you. Or mock you. Or they'll do... we're supposed to take advice from people who literally celebrated the death of Charlie Kirk? I don't think so. And there's been a couple of shootings that have happened, and I think her name was like Renee Good. Then there was this other guy, like Alex Preddy or something. And these are agitators, these are paid protesters who went out there totally propagandized by the corporate media, by Hollywood. They've convinced themselves that ICE are a bunch of Nazis, and they got themselves killed because they went out there trying to run a cop over. The guy, Alex Preddy, tried to grab a soldier's gun, an ICE officer's gun, and he got himself shot. And so all this rhetoric that the corporations, that Hollywood, that all these actors are regurgitating, people like Jimmy Kimmel, it's served to get these protesters killed, basically. They're putting these protesters in dangerous way. And when you're like Jimmy Kimmel and you constantly compare ICE to Nazis, you're essentially telling your fan base, hey, you need to grab a gun and go shoot these people. Because that's what they're trying to do. They don't call us Nazis because we actually are Nazis. They call us Nazis in order to justify violence towards us. And I've said it before, but I fully support what ICE is doing. I wish they would ramp up those deportations. I wish that the Republicans, the other conservative pundits would stop being so weak. I wish libertarians would stop being so profoundly stupid. And libertarians need to understand that the people that are being deported would not support libertarian causes. The Somalians who were committing tax fraud in Minnesota, they never would have voted for any libertarians. That they hate everything about America. They were here only to scam and take American taxpayer dollars. And I think these people should be deported. And all these protesters that are protesting ICE, they're never going to vote libertarian. They're never going to vote for a libertarian cause. These are the same people who think libertarians and fascists are the same thing. They literally can't tell the difference between a libertarian, a conservative, a nationalist, a fascist. In the deranged leftist eyes, everyone's the same. Everyone to the right of them is a Nazi and is an evil bigot. And, and yeah, if you look at X, it's become a dumpster fire. The left has these Hollywood movie actors that they worship, that they follow, that's affirming all their delusions, and then they make all these stupid comic book arts about all these superheroes like beating up ICE agents and stuff. And they live in a fantasy world. They live in a world where they are the heroes, and it's a fantasy. It's a fantasy. It's a fantasy world that these liberals live in because they haven't grown up past puberty, basically. Mentally speaking, they're still pretty pubescent teens who watch these superhero movies, who put themselves in these superhero movies, who always see themselves as a hero. And it's dumb because they refuse to live in the real world. The real world is tough. The real world is not a utopia. The real world is not egalitarian. The real world is tough, it's harsh, and the things that we have to do to save our country is tough and harsh. And we need conservatives in office who are willing to make those tough and harsh decisions, which I do have to credit people like J.D. Vance and Donald Trump for continuing to push and pursue that, despite all the pushback they're getting. And people always know how to press your buttons, don't they? When it comes to when it comes to them disagreeing with you, people seem to always know how to target you with the right insult to really get you mad or try to rage bait you. And it's hard to do that for me. But people have tried. And I think that there is and this is going to send me on another topic, but I think there is a certain wisdom in having and posting from an anonymous account. It may sound like I'm just justifying cowardly behavior, but there is a wisdom in posting from an anonymous account, and that's because it forces people to engage and debate your ideas. It prevents people from stalking your account and insulting you. Like, for me, people go on my account and see that I'm single, and so they naturally think I'm an incel who is going to be forever alone. I got that insult on one of my YouTube videos when I talked about interracial marriage. So that was interesting. That was fun. But you know what? Like what Winston Churchill said, if you're not making enemies, you're doing something wrong. And I'm not going to throw stones I'm not going to waste time throwing stones at dogs. Like the term Nazis or the term bigot, it's lost all its meaning. We don't care anymore. We don't care what you call us. We're going to continue to support ICE. We're going to continue to vote for the most hardcore far-right person we can. And we're going to continue to push forward. We don't care about the opposition from libertarians, from the liberals, from the moderates, or the neocons. They can cry about it. This is the country that we want to live in. And we want to restore what America was like back in just 20 years ago. And we're not going to allow people to illegally cross our borders and then take advantage of our tax dollars and scam us. I voted for mass deportation, so I expect that every single illegal immigrant should be deported and never allowed to return. That's what I want to see. And that's what I expect all my politicians who I vote for, that's what I expect them to do. So, that's enough from my geopolitical spill. I wanted to talk about one of the Bible verses. And this is going to have to be short because I'm already almost at the 30-minute mark. But I wanted to talk about one of the most impactful Bible verses that I have had, that's had an effect on me. And the Bible verse, a Bible passage that shows the reality of penal substitutionary atonement. It's Romans 8, chapter 1, or Romans 8, verses 1 through 4. Therefore, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, because through Christ Jesus, the law of the Spirit who gives life has set you free from the law of sin and death. For what the law was powerless to do because it is weakened by the flesh, God did by sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh to be a sin offering. He condemned sin in the flesh in order that the righteous requirements of the law might be fully met in us, who do not live according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. This again shows us that Christ's sacrifice on the cross was a substitutionary offering. And it even says it right here in verse 3, to be a sin offering. And I think verse 1 is very impactful, something to remember, that there is no condemnation on you anymore, because Christ is taking that condemnation on himself. It has become a sin offering, and because of that, we don't have the rags of unrighteousness that we had. We have the righteousness of Christ, which is pure and clean. And that's the beauty of Reformed theology, is that we believe sola scriptura, so we believe that these verses shape everything, that every kind of doctrine that we preach is shaped by what the Bible says. And penal substitutionary atonement has been an issue of debate for some reason among Protestant churches for, it seems like, a millennia. But I don't know why this has been a topic of debate when the Bible is so clear on this. And we've been talking about some stuff like this throughout the Sunday school. So I'm going to be having some more thoughts about this in the future episodes, probably. But in 2 weeks from now, I hope to have a new variety of topics. Hopefully next time, in the next couple of weeks, things with ICE and these violent protests are going to go down. Like, it's a tragedy, I think, that these two protesters got themselves killed like this, because they did have families who were going to miss them. However, I think the ICE agents, they have families too, and they can't allow, and what they did was self-defense. And we have to remember that, like, you feel for the people that were hurt by their deaths, and you hope and pray that these kind of violent protests, of this violence rhetoric, will soothe over, and peace will be established, and the left will calm down. But throughout all of this, we have to remember that God's in control, that God is sovereign, and that God is still good. So, with that being said, tell me what you think below, and until next time, this has been the Student Theologian.